Let's sit down for a moment. Just you and me. No big medical terms. No lecture. Just a quiet truth that too many people ignore until it's too late. After 60, something shifts in the brain. It's not always dramatic. You're still functioning, still remembering faces, still holding conversations. But somehow, the sharpness softens. You walk into a room and forget why. You reread the same paragraph twice. And little by little, it starts to worry you. Now here's the part no one tells you. By your early 60 seconds, you've already lost about 10% of your hippocampus, the part of the brain that forms and retrieves memory. That's not just theory. That's from years of MRI data and cognitive testing compiled by the National Institutes of Health. But what if that loss wasn't final? A team at UCLA tracked older adults with early signs of memory decline. They didn't use drugs. They didn't do brain games. They made one small change at night, what they ate before bed. Within 4 weeks, their memory scores actually improved. Not maintained. Not slowed down. Improved. That's when I knew we'd been looking at this all wrong. Memory loss isn't always about age. Sometimes it's about energy. Sometimes your brain isn't broken. It's just starving, and it's asking for help. Because while you sleep, your brain doesn't shut down. It cleans, it repairs, it rewires. But it can only do that if you give it the right tools. So tonight, I want to show you 3 simple foods. Foods you've probably walked past 100 times. That can quietly strengthen your neural connections while you sleep. And if you're new here, I'm Dr. James Porter. I help older adults protect their brain, naturally. Feel free to subscribe if you want to keep learning with me. Let's talk about what your brain really needs, starting with a nut most people ignore. Let's start with something that looks almost too simple to matter. A walnut. It's small, it's common, and it may be the single most overlooked ally your brain has after 60. Now, I'm not talking about brain boosts or feel-good superfood hype. I'm talking about the real architecture of your mind. The synapses. The little bridges between neurons where signals are passed. Every memory, every name, every plan you make tomorrow relies on how strong those bridges are tonight. And here's what makes walnuts so powerful. They carry 3 specific compounds that target different layers of brain repair. First is omega-3, especially a plant-based form called alpha-linolenic acid. This is what neurons use to build flexible cell membranes. And the more flexible those membranes are, the better your brain can adapt, communicate, and recover from minor damage. A double-blind trial, published in the Journal of Nutrition in 2020, found that older adults who consumed about 30 grams of walnuts daily for 6 months showed significant improvement in cognitive flexibility and verbal recall compared to the control group. That means more than sharper thinking. It means your brain was literally rebuilding its communication network. Now, let's talk about melatonin. You've probably heard of it as a sleep hormone, but that's just the start. Walnuts contain small but meaningful amounts of natural melatonin, which helps regulate your sleep cycles. And sleep is not just rest for the brain. It's repair mode. Melatonin also acts as an antioxidant inside the brain. That means it goes after the tiny free radicals that quietly damage brain tissue over time. And unlike synthetic supplements, melatonin from food tends to support, not override your body's own rhythms. Finally, walnuts contain polyphenols, especially ellagic acid. This compound reduces neuroinflammation. And that's a big deal, because chronic low-grade inflammation is now believed to be one of the root causes of age-related memory decline. A 2019 study in the journal Current Neuropharmacology showed that diets rich in ellagic acid helped reduce oxidative stress in the hippocampus and even promoted new neuronal growth in aged mice. It's not a magic pill, but it's a very real, very natural signal to your brain that healing is possible. Let me show you how this plays out in real life. David, 72, from Washington, had been forgetting little things, turning off the stove, misplacing bills. His daughter was worried. But he didn't want medication yet. We added just one change to his evening: a handful of walnuts after dinner. Within 6 weeks, he wasn't just remembering appointments. He was back to reading mystery novels and finishing them. Now let's be clear. Walnuts are not a cure. But when used consistently, they give your brain 3 things it needs at night: structure, protection, and signals to grow. So how do you use them? Aim for a small handful, about 7 walnut halves, about 30 to 45 minutes before bed. Eat them plain, not roasted in oil, not covered in sugar, and not mixed in trail mix with chocolate chips. If you prefer, you can chop them and mix into a small bowl of warm oats. Just avoid combining them with heavy starch or sugar at night, as this can interfere with the absorption of certain nutrients. You don't need to eat them every night. Start with 3 to 4 times per week, and observe not just your memory, but your sleep quality, your mood, your clarity the next morning. The brain may seem like a mystery, but it responds to rhythm, and the simple act of feeding it the right material at the right time can lead to changes you feel. Not in months, sometimes in just a few weeks. Next, we'll talk about a seed that supports your neurotransmitters as you sleep gently, powerfully, and without effort. The next food may surprise you. It doesn't come in a pill. It doesn't have fancy packaging. And yet, it holds one of the most overlooked keys to memory recovery in older adults. I'm talking about sunflower seeds. These tiny seeds are packed with a very specific group of nutrients your brain desperately needs at night. Not to fuel your body, but to recharge your neurotransmitters, the chemical messengers that control how your thoughts move. When we sleep, our brain doesn't just rest. It resets the levels of serotonin, acetylcholine, and dopamine. These are the signals that allow your brain to record, store, and retrieve information the next day. And if these signals run low, even the strongest memory can feel disconnected. Here's where sunflower seeds come in. They are especially rich in vitamin B1, also known as thiamine. This vitamin plays a central role in converting glucose into energy inside brain cells. But more importantly, it helps maintain the outer layer of neurons, what we call the myelin sheath. When this layer breaks down, signals slow, memory falters, and cognitive fatigue sets in. A 2021 study published in Nutrients showed that adults over 65 with consistent intake of vitamin B1 performed better on short-term memory tasks than those with deficiencies, even when overall calorie intake was the same. But thiamine is only part of the story. Sunflower seeds are also a rich plant source of choline. This is a precursor to acetylcholine, the neurotransmitter responsible for memory encoding and attention span. Low acetylcholine is one of the early hallmarks of age-related cognitive decline. By replenishing it gently through food, especially in the evening, you support the very mechanism your brain uses to imprint new information. In 2017, the Journal of Clinical Nutrition reported that older adults with higher dietary choline intake had significantly better verbal memory and delayed recall over a 4-year period. And then there's tryptophan. Sunflower seeds contain meaningful levels of this amino acid, which supports serotonin production. Serotonin not only stabilizes mood, but also helps regulate sleep patterns. And deeper sleep means more efficient memory consolidation. Researchers at the University of Oxford, in a 2019 paper published in Sleep Medicine, found that diets rich in natural tryptophan sources led to improved sleep architecture and greater memory consolidation in adults over 60. So what happens when all of this works together? You sleep more deeply. Your neurotransmitters reset more effectively. And the next day, your thoughts feel more connected. Not faster, but smoother, calmer, and more complete. To use sunflower seeds effectively, focus on small portions. 1 to 2 tablespoons in the early evening are enough. You can eat them raw, lightly roasted, or mixed into a small dish of warm grains or vegetables. Avoid salted or flavored versions, which can irritate digestion or disrupt hydration. This isn't about eating a bag at once. It's about gentle support, just enough to give your brain the message: we're still working, we're still remembering. And we're not done yet. In the next section, we'll look at something even more basic, something many people fear at night: carbohydrates. But the right kind, in the right form, can quietly fuel the brain's repair process while you sleep. I know what you might be thinking. Toast? At night? Isn't that exactly what people say to avoid if you want to stay healthy? That depends entirely on what kind of toast and why you're eating it. Because the truth is, your brain depends on glucose. Not sugar, not soda, but slow, steady, complex glucose, the kind found in real whole grains, especially when paired with the right nutrients before sleep. Let me explain. Your brain consumes nearly 20% of your body's energy, even while you're sleeping. And during the night, it uses that energy to perform something called synaptic pruning. That's the process of cutting away weak or unused connections and reinforcing the ones that matter most. It's how you remember what's important. It's how you wake up with clarity instead of confusion. Now, here's where whole grain toast plays a role. Unlike refined carbs, whole grains release glucose slowly into your bloodstream. This helps avoid spikes in insulin that can disrupt sleep or trigger inflammation. Instead, it gives your brain a steady drip of energy, exactly when it needs it. But the real power lies in how this slow-release glucose activates the absorption of tryptophan, the same amino acid we mentioned earlier from sunflower seeds. See, tryptophan needs insulin to cross the blood-brain barrier. That means without some form of carbohydrate, your brain may not absorb enough of it to produce serotonin and melatonin. So if you're eating tryptophan-rich foods in the evening, but avoiding carbs entirely, your brain may be missing a critical step in the repair process. A 2022 study from the Journal of Sleep Research confirmed that participants who ate a small amount of complex carbohydrates in the evening had significantly improved sleep quality and greater overnight memory retention compared to those on low-carb diets. That's not about eating a plate of pasta. It's about balance. And it's about timing. Whole grains also contain magnesium, which helps calm the nervous system, and B vitamins, especially B6, which aid in neurotransmitter production. And here's a real-life example. Rita, 69, from Oregon, had stopped reading at night. She said her brain just felt too foggy by 7 p.m. We added a slice of whole grain toast with a smear of almond butter before bed. 3 weeks later, she told me this: "I'm sleeping deeper. And last night, I picked up a book again." That's not a miracle. That's physiology. That's the brain finally getting what it needs. So how do you use this? Look for bread made from 100% whole grains. Not white bread labeled as wheat. Toast it lightly. Eat it warm. And pair it with a small amount of healthy fat or protein like nut butter or a few sunflower seeds to slow digestion and enhance absorption. The goal is not to feel full. The goal is to give your brain just enough fuel to complete its work during sleep. Some people worry that eating at night will make them gain weight or spike their blood sugar. But studies show that a small portion of complex carbs in the evening, especially when eaten calmly and mindfully, does not impair metabolism. In fact, it can improve sleep quality, which in turn supports hormone balance and weight regulation. The key is always the same. Eat with intention, and give your brain the tools it needs to do what it was designed to do. Heal, rewire, remember. In the next section, I'll walk you through how to combine these 3 foods into a simple night routine, one that supports brain plasticity without stress, supplements, or guesswork. So how do you bring all of this together? Not as a diet, not as another strict rule to follow, but as a quiet rhythm, a small act of care you give your brain at the end of each day. Because what you eat before bed doesn't just fill your stomach. It sends a signal. It tells your nervous system what kind of night it's going to be. A night of shallow sleep and forgotten thoughts, or a night of slow healing, deep rest, and stronger connections. Here's what that looks like in real life. About an hour before bed, pour yourself a glass of warm water or herbal tea. Sit down. Slow your pace. Let your nervous system know you're transitioning. Then prepare a small plate. Nothing large. Just enough. Start with a single slice of 100% whole grain toast. Toast it lightly. Add a light smear of almond or walnut butter. Not too much. Just enough to soften the edges. Sprinkle 1 tablespoon of sunflower seeds on top. You can press them gently into the nut butter so they don't fall off. And next to that, place 5 or 6 walnut halves. Eat them slowly, one at a time. No sugar. No fruit juice. No caffeine. This is not dessert. This is fuel for your second brain shift, the one that happens while you sleep. You don't need to eat this every night. Start with 3 times a week. Observe how you feel. Notice your mood the next morning. Notice your dreams. And most importantly, notice if you begin to feel a little more like yourself again. Your brain doesn't ask for much, but it does need certain ingredients to repair, especially after 60. It needs steady energy, natural precursors for neurotransmitters, and a calm environment where inflammation stays low and oxygen flows freely. And that's exactly what these 3 foods deliver. Not through force, but through quiet support. This is not a quick fix, but it is a true fix, one that respects how the brain really works. In the final section, I want to leave you with something deeper than facts. A reminder that you are not fading. You are rebuilding, and it's never too late to remember who you are. If you've made it this far, thank you. It means you care. It means you're still searching not for a miracle, but for something that makes sense. Something your body will recognize. Something your brain can actually use. And that tells me one very important thing. You haven't given up. Listen closely. You're not broken. You're not slipping away. And this is not just part of getting older. What you're experiencing may simply be a brain that hasn't been fed the right way in years. A brain that's still trying to repair itself, but running low on what it needs to do that work. I've spent over 30 years watching people change